The arts bring people together, and a recent dance festival not only drew a diverse audience of dance lovers, but also performers from across South Africa and the world. One of these is Shri Aniruddha Knight, whose life story shows how dance can bridge the cultural divide.
The late Tador Balasaraswati was a Bharatanatyam dancer of near legendary ability. It was thanks to her influence that the young Aniruddha Knight became enthralled by this ancient art form. On his mother's side, his family connection with classical dance and music dates back more than 2 centuries. Kriya met up with Aniruddha in Durban.
Your childhood was split between the USA and India. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I was born in India, and then we moved to the US when I was about 4 years old. And I went to a regular public school, had a very regular American childhood. But at home, it was both having a very traditional Indian life where, you had Indian worship and Indian food. I spoke to my mom in Tamil and spoke to my dad in English. So I could bifurcate both cultures very easily from childhood.
But that must have been quite difficult to have both of them.
It becomes easier to handle. You have to be able to understand that you're both and that you're unique, and you have to make what you are out of both.
Balasaraswati represented the 7th generation of a family who dedicated themselves to dance and music. She helped revitalize the study and performance of Bharatanatyam outside South India.
Tell me a little bit more about your grandmother.
My grandmother T. Balasaraswati is still regarded as one of the greatest dancers of all time. It was the purity of her art form that actually attracted people from across the world.
Do you remember your first dance lesson?
I have no idea because I've been dancing since pretty much an infant. But I can talk about my first performance. That's one thing I do remember, and that was at the Museum of Natural History in New York City. They paid me $50 for it, and it was for 15 minutes, and I was so proud of that. The hype of it and the rush of performing, it's very, very addictive, and it satisfies a certain high that you get.
I'm really looking forward to seeing you perform, but maybe you can show us a couple of moves now?
Sure. There are 2 aspects to the dance where you have the abstract style and you have the more emotive style, which is actually in expressing a line of poetry or just a statement. So if we say like, the parrot speaks, right? So you bring that parrot alive. Parrot.
There we go.
And remember in dance, you have to put your elbow up. And to show you how really painful it is,
it really is painful.
You have to bring it in. Parrot speaks, 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 parrot speaks. Or if you add a certain sentimentality towards the parrot, for example, you pet the parrot, you hold her, and she speaks, you speak back, she speaks, we speak.
Balasaraswati had a holistic approach, studying dance and music to become a complete performer. She inspired the renowned director Satyajit Ray to make a documentary about her, and also received India's 2nd and 3rd highest civilian awards in recognition of her contribution to art and culture.
Your family has been in Bharatanatyam for 270 years. What has been their approach to the dance?
There's a certain universality to any art form that can hold itself. And to be able to communicate that with people who have no exposure to the dance, who have no understanding to the dance, and where they can actually say, okay, I can watch this and actually take something away from it without actually saying, okay, I understand the piece or I understand the dance. You don't need to understand anything, just watch.
Tell me a bit more about the Devadasi system in India.
It's a very forward way of thinking, even for that time. There were the women who were educated in language, in the arts, in religion, and were actually given status equal to a priest in the temple. That inadvertently changed with the advent of a very Victorian mindset, where this independent woman that was created had no space anymore. They had to leave their professions as artists because they were shamed into leaving it. But my family was actually one of the very few families who stood fast and said, no, we're keeping our art.
How is traditional dance being received in the US?
Whatever you give to a country like the US, it becomes a part of the fabric of it. Because there's no one race or language or person that defines what America is, at least for me.
Tell me a bit about tonight's performance. What can we expect?
It'll be a very traditional format called the Margam that I'll be doing. Based on the traditional Bharatanatyam performance, and giving you snippets of that and also explaining along with it.
Father and son were invited to perform at the Nritya Angan festival. And for this performance, Douglas not only accompanied Aniruddha as a percussionist, but also provided a narration of the dance.
I'm stricken with passion. How can you be so indifferent, O dweller in the beautiful city of Tiruvarur?
By being the first male descendant of his family to have dedicated his life to dance, Aniruddha is a pioneer. He has brought Bharatanatyam to the world of mainstream dance in the USA and honor to his family tradition.